So in this lesson, we're going to take a look at how you can export your audio. Once you've completed your arrangement and you want to export a stereo file, all you need to do is select Arrange. Make sure to include a little bit of overhang here to account for any reverb tails. And go to File, Export Audio/Video, or use the shortcut Shift-Command-R. Now when you do that, you'll see that our first drop down asks what we want to render. Our master track will render the whole arrangement. All individual tracks will render each individual track as a stereo file, and that's a quick way to create stems. Or you can use your selected tracks only option, which will only export your selected tracks. You can see render start and render length are already imported from my selection here, so you don't need to adjust that manually. This option here to include return and master effects allows you to export individual audio files with their respective processing chains and returns. So if I enable that, I would have something that would be called a wet stem, and if I disable that, it would be a dry stem. That just means one has processing and the dry one doesn't. You can also use render as loop. That'll render a loop with small fades at the beginning and end of your clip. You can convert this to mono. You can use normalize to export all of your audio at a similar level. Create analysis file. We'll create an Ableton analysis file if you plan on using this in Ableton again. Sample rate allows you to adjust sample rate export settings. For this, 44.1 is the standard CD and streaming quality. And then under the PCM tab, encode PCM, if we turn that on, we will be able to select a WAV file, an AIFF, or FLAC. In this case, we'll go with WAV. We can set the bit depth. 16 is standard for CD and streaming. And you have dither options. For this case, we'll just use no dither. Underneath that, we have the MP3 button, which will also encode a 320 kilobytes per second MP3. If you don't want to export a WAV, you can check that off and just have the MP3 or vice versa. Lastly, we have the video tab here, which would allow us to export any video that we have within Ableton. Since we don't have any video, this option is not available. Let's go ahead and switch this back to master. We have our range selected. We want to export just an MP3. Here you can go ahead and hit export, and it's going to ask you where you want to save this. Since I haven't titled this track, let's just pretend that I wanted to save it here or in a session from March. We'll save it here and then hit save. It'll take a quick second here, and you'll see that under our Ableton sessions for this month, we have this tutorial file. And that's it for how you can export audio in Ableton Live. I hope you find this useful. In our last lesson, we're going to take a look at some extra bonus tips and things you should know in case things aren't working.